An Irish independent digital subscription doesn't just get you the news. It gets you the best of Ireland's stories all in one place. Whether it's the best of politics, business, sport, entertainment or lifestyle. Get it all for just €4 a month for 12 months when you first subscribe. Visit independent.ie/subscribe today. Irish Independent. Terms and conditions apply. Cancel anytime.
Who's your current favourite never played minor senior player at the moment?
What a question.
This is Conin's favourite thing. Do you not know that?
No.
Inspiring story. Yeah.
Struck me as a 6 pints in question.
No.
That's your thing.
That's my thing.
I remember you put up an all-time 15, I think.
Yeah, I need to actually update that.
It's a real snapshot of man before he had a child and the time he had in his hands and now. Okay, that should be enough just. And if we lost some video, we'd have the audio, yeah? Okay, perfect. Okay, let's go. Hey, everyone. First time in 2 years, Republic of Ireland have beaten a team not called Gibraltar. You know what? I felt good.
Is the green jumper a conscious choice, Joe, or was it just...
I can't say it's not, you know. Maybe it's a bit of that. Ronan Mullen here, hello.
Hi, Joe.
Conan Doherty, hello to you.
Hello, HH is at the wheel.
Gary Breen incoming. We'll go over to Aidan Fitzmaurice in Helsinki. I had a thought on the way in. I haven't done one of these conversations where we've won in a long time. I realised I was institutionalised. I can do the Ireland have lost a football match chat in my sleep. I know the formula. It's like you come on, you do quick word on the performance, what went wrong. Then you do what was wrong. What was wrong with the tactics this time. Then you throw in but the players have to take some responsibility. 2-part, and you round it off with the 15-minute big picture finale. FAI a shambles, no academies, and you're out the door. You're done. I was like, what do we say here?
Yeah, in some way the stuff in the pitch is irrelevant because it's all what's going on behind the scenes.
But it's nice. Was it a great performance? No. Was it a great standard of game? No. Do we care? I don't think so. I think we're all a bit too beaten down to care. We don't have the luxury of picking holes in winning performances just yet. Yeah. We'll just take it.
I think this is the first time since 2013 that Ireland have come from behind in a competitive match and won.
2012.
2012.
They said it last night on the TV.
I was going Kazakhstan, Noel King.
It was Kazakhstan. They said that was 2012. Was that 13?
Oh, I think it's 2013.
Okay.
Yeah,
Over a decade.
Yeah, which is incredible. Like that. I think that's why maybe everything else, the analysis, the feeling throughout the first half of the first half. It's all overridden by what Ireland have just done. That is a big win, and it's against a team who are supposed to be as good as us, which we normally don't really do well away from home.
Yeah, because after the conversation on Tuesday with Dan McDonnell and Dion Fanning, Dan and I and Dion continued out in the kitchen, and they were a bit surprised at my conviction that things couldn't get any worse for this team. I was like, I'm optimistic because it just can't get much worse than it's been, and they were saying things can get a lot worse. And on 17 minutes when Nathan Collins made that mistake, I thought to myself, oh, geez, maybe things are going to get so much worse than I even imagined possible. It was a sinking feeling. At halftime, I stood straight up and I drove across the road to the shop and I bought crisps and chocolate and Comfort 8.
Preemptively.
I was like, I'm not watching the halftime. I'm just going. And so I did. To illustrate just how beaten down we are as a nation, we got an email in from Rory. I'm a UCD student and I've been properly following this Ireland team largely as a season ticket holder since the second Mick McCarthy era.
For God's sake.
How grim. Imagine that's like the second Mick McCarthy era. Onwards is your thing.
I remember the Mick McCarthy days. Oh yeah. The second one. Oh no.
The one the other way to Gibraltar one. Yeah.
It's horrific. I watched last night's game in the UCD campus bar. Now he does, for context, I mean, he does have a memory which predates the second Mick McCarthy era, or he'd be very advanced with his email. I was 10 for the Shane Long goal against Germany and Robbie Brady's winner against Italy, the latter of which sent me into tears of joy for the first time in my life. I guess as a 10-year-old, that's kind of maybe when you start crying, tears of joy. As we all know, going has been tough since then. In all my time as a fan, the Scotland game was the only time I had ever left the Aviva Stadium happy. He says of last night then, when Liam Scales scored the goal, the DJ interrupted karaoke
Karaoke was the main event in this bar.
You know it's big if they interrupt karaoke.
I was literally comfort eating in tears on the couch around this stage. They were having a better night regardless.
What was the song, Rory?
He didn't say.
Email back.
DJ interrupted karaoke to announce that Liam Scales was the first UCD alumnus to score for the national side. You just would have presumed a UCD graduate may have scored for the national side before, but I guess traditionally college education wasn't the done thing. You were over and over at a UK club from a young age. So the very first UCD graduate to score for Ireland last night, you saw it.
That's cool. And they stopped karaoke, and we're going to go back now with Total Eclipse of the Heart.
He says ABBA's Dancing Queen was aptly the next song.
Okay.
When Brady scored the winner, it was the first time in my life. There's a lot of firsts. This is a young man, and I think we can be cognizant of that. This was the first time in my life that I hugged a stranger. Pure jubilation. There's no real point to this email, just to say that in spite of how bad things are in this country for football, last night was one of the best nights of my life as an Irish sports fan. Get in. Loving the show and life in general, Rory. I kind of had a temptation to be old and cynical and haggard in response to Rory's mail, but no, Rory, you keep on loving life. You keep on hugging strangers every time we beat the 62nd best team in the world. Because life is going to get you eventually, but get out soon, Rory. 20 years are going to be going by, and you're going to be comforting on a couch having chocolate and crisps when Ireland are losing. So have at it.
You're going to be reminiscing over the second comment of Mick McCarthy. Honestly, I wanted to do the same when you were going through that email, thinking, okay, we'll have a bit of fun here with Rory. But as you continued, I got goosebumps all over my body.
It's nice.
I think I'm a sap for this sort of stuff anyway. Wow. And whatever it is, wherever you're finding your joy, it's great that you're just finding it. And yeah, look, it does probably show how grim and how beaten down we have been as a nation. But at least Rory's finding some little green shoots now.
Yeah, it was a hell of a night in UCD last night.
I think in some ways, you alluded to it there, Joe, the performance wasn't great, but we got the win. But sometimes wins precipitate good mood, and good mood precipitates better performances. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
On some level, it precipitates each other. So
we have to start rolling the stone. We need some momentum for good performances to happen. I totally agree. Let's hear from our fearless new leader, Heimir Hallgrímsson, afterwards, talking to the media about the game generally.
You probably saw that in the substitution that we wanted to go for the win. There were the moments in the game that Finland had the upper hand in the second half. It was kind of swinging a little bit, especially when they made their substitutions. They kind of had a 5-7 minute spell where they looked really fresh, and then it equaled out. But I think both coaches wanted to win and took chances, and at this time it fell for us. And Festi was strangely confident, arrogantly confident in front of one or two players, and just took them on. And brilliant run on the far post. And a good cross, and then we had lots of bodies in the box. I think that shows the will to go for the win.
Festi Ebusele, strangely arrogant in front of one or two players, said Heimir Hallgrímsson. When one of those two players was Pookie in his current shape, I can see how 22-year-old Festi thought, you know what, I like the look of that gap there. But he did so well, and we'll talk to Gary Breen about it, I'm sure. The quality of the cross was excellent, not to mention Brady's touch and finish. So good. You have to agree with Hallgrímsson when he says, well, listen, we had players in the box. It says something that our right wing back crossed to our left wing back at that stage of the game. We were trying to win it. So it's just a fill-up for everybody, including Hallgrímsson, who was a little bit under the gun 2 and a bit games in to his reign. But Festi Ebusele, welcome to the bosom of our hearts, I think.
What I loved about it is that he goes down into the corner, realises he has to come back out. Normally we just see this pattern, to get the ball back out there and we'll switch to play. But he just takes stock. He has a look, like you say, he sees Pookie. Talking about being strangely arrogant, the two Finland guys, Pookie and his teammate, the arrogance just to give Festi that space. Festi Ebusele's on the ball, waking up, and he just goes through them. You don't give him that sort of space.
I think they were, and it's probably in general keeping with the standard of the game, unfortunately, I think they probably thought what you just said is that, well, look, the two of us are here, so you know what you're meant to do here, so knock it back.
Yeah, be a good lad and knock it back.
Yeah, don't. Let's keep this sensible. We're both at 1-1 here. Everyone's happy.
You've got your 1-1 that you normally get.
I suppose the other unusual aspect to last night was that we had some luck. You know, you think of the chance that fell to Glenn Kamara on the penalty spot, goal at his mercy, and he tries to curl it into the right-hand corner and contrives to send it high and wide. And Darren Maloney at that point said, well, in 62 appearances, he scored 2 goals. And I thought, no kidding. But also the header. Was it Schuller's header at the end? I can't quite remember his name, but even watching the slow motion of that header, this is like a silly thing to say. It makes no sense. It's not based in reality or data or science. But in my heart of hearts, I just feel if Stephen Kenny was still the manager, that goes the other side of the post into the net. And I don't know why I'm saying that. I don't know why I feel that. Again, it makes no sense. But there's just that circuit breaker that sometimes a new manager can inject into a setup.
It was one of those
that look. Yeah,
it was one of those deceptive camera angles on the live action where you don't actually know where the ball is going to go, but you're just presuming, having watched Ireland, that it's going to go in the net.
Of course, it's going.
And
in.
It didn't.
Yeah.
And obviously Stephen Kenny is associated with everything going forward, especially in the media term. But it always seems to be distilled into that Slovakia game at the very start of his tenure, and the bad luck in that game alone was like, come on, if we had known what was to come after, you would have been like, it's fairly typical. So yeah, I echo what you're saying there.
I think that's your momentum point, though.
Again. Oh yeah, if Ireland beat Slovakia, and they still would have had to win another game, so it's not as if that was the total sliding doors moment. But still, yeah, that changes everything.
Yeah,
so.
And I'm very conscious there's a huge degree of scoreboard journalism across the board here, like guilty of it ourselves. I mean, certainly the mood music in my various WhatsApp friend groups at 1-1 was, you know, a bit better in the second half for sure, and a bit more intensity, and had, you know, pockets of dominance, albeit in amongst the Kamara miss and the Schuller header. So a bit better, but still a sense of the standard of this game is average. We've been average, 1-1.
Yeah.
Goal transforms it.
But scoreboard journalism counts for something as well, though, because, you know, you often hear managers, fans, whoever talking about, you know, well, if you had scored that, then it would have been different. Or if we didn't concede that, it would have been different. But you did, or you didn't score. And the difference is people who can get it done, people who can react to going behind, like we haven't done in over a decade. You know, that's the sort of adversity we haven't seen Ireland come through. If you go through the list of results, and it's very easy to go through like the wins because they're all just highlighted in green and they're very few, especially in competitive matches. It's usually 1-0, 2-0. It's usually when we get ahead and we hold on to it or we nick it at the end. It's never, rarely, coming from behind and showing that bit of fortitude, which we did last night. So I think the scoreboard journalism is definitely meriting something there.
Yeah, and in one-off performances, like Stephen Kenny might have said, our performances weren't great. We didn't get the rub of the green. And I think it's Bill Parcells, the American football coach, used to say, eventually you are what your record says you are. You know what I mean? After a big enough sample size, luck doesn't cover it, you know. So maybe we'll see. Again, Hallgrímsson's only a couple of games in here. But just to circle back to the Ebicelli point, I was saying yesterday about him needing, or Hallgrímsson needing to come in and like put some shape on this, or at least make a statement, like by circumstance and sometimes by decision. Ebicelli had to get a run last night because Doherty and Coleman weren't in the squad for different reasons, but he made a point of saying this is our window to try out new players in this position, and it couldn't have borne out fruits better, and his logic was justified. So I think that's something you can begin to point at, that he's making decisions. You can't be saying he's assigning them to other people. He put his neck on the line with that comment, and it bore fruit last night. So
yeah, and when you think about it, I mean, not to sort of have a little dig at Matt Doherty, but the way Hallgrímsson's obviously looking at the squad, he probably is a good bit down the pecking order, where we were thinking if Seamus Coleman's not there, surely Doherty will be there, but he's playing Dara O'Shea there. He wants that extra centre back. Maybe that allows Robbie Brady a bit more freedom, and then he's got Ebicelli there in the wings ready to come on. He's got Seamus Coleman, but I don't think we should go without really sort of celebrating Robbie Brady as well, because I mean, my God, he got the assist and the goal, but he's got 10 goals now for Ireland. I think he's just taken over Roy Keane in the exact same amount of appearances, 67 appearances. He's moved into 15th on the all-time list, 1 behind James McLean, 4 behind Kevin Doyle, John Walters. And some of the goals he's gotten have been so clutch, like, you know, Bosnia, Italy, France, in Lyon, penalties. Like, you know, we're 0-0 against the host nation. Robbie Brady, you knew he was going to score that day. He's the one who got the last minute goal against Armenia to spare Stephen Kenny's blushes when we were 2-0 up and suddenly it was 2-2. Robbie Brady was the one who got the 91st minute goal. And now this one as well, another late winner for him. And I know some of the conversation is, can he play left back? He's 32 now, he hasn't played left back all that often. But I actually just went through the last year comparing him to other left backs on FB Ref, and obviously, like, you'd expect him coming out on top in terms of shots and expected assists and expected goals. That's what he brings to the table anyway. But like, if you go through his tackles, this is compared to other fullbacks across the world. So per 90 tackles, 97 percentile, blocks 91 percentile, aerial duels 98 percentile. So he's actually performing really well defensively as well for Preston. So it's just an interesting sort of dynamic for somebody who's been so heroic for Ireland as well, but he actually is doing such a good shift.
Well, now that you say it, I mean, Darragh O'Shea had his moments, obviously, on the right-hand side where Winger went by him and he struggled here and there, certainly early on. Can't get too many times when Brady's played left-back where a winger has taken him to the cleaners.
He's tuned in, he's fit. And he and you heard him talking afterwards as well. Like, it means a lot to him, and that's not easy to find somebody who really just gets it. And even just when he was being interviewed on RTE afterwards, and just a little high five between him and Hallgrímsson. There's something to that as well, where you have a senior player like that, a manager now who suddenly, I know we're all heel turning now and be like, this is the guy, he's the one that's fixing it. But having the sort of approval there from Robbie Brady, who's been there and done it over 67 caps as well, I think that'll spread into the rest of the camp.
Okay. Fitting moment to bring in Gary Breen, which we'll do. And also, by the way, Aidan Fitzmaurice from Helsinki. And then towards the end of the podcast, we're going to talk a little bit about Lee Carsley. He is getting it at the moment. It's all got a little bit ugly for him on the back of Greece beating England for the first time in their history 2-1 at Wembley. But let's talk a little bit more about Ireland, I think.
Tax and Collins has given it away for Apollo. He was never going to miss from there. It's a huge mistake from the Republic of Ireland captain. It's awful. There's that far side, flicked on and in. Liam Scales with the first goal of Heimir Hallgrímsson's reign as Republic of Ireland manager. Ebosele backs himself. So well, here is Ebosele. Decent delivery towards the far side, and there's a goal! Robbie Brady with his 10th international goal. All 3 points for the Republic of Ireland. It's a rare competitive win for the boys in green, and it's a first win at his third attempt for Heimir Hallgrímsson. It has finished. Finland 1, the Republic of Ireland 2.
Happy to say Gary Breen is with us, and we're not talking about a defeat, Gary.
We're not. We're finally talking about a win for Ireland. Heimir talked about stopping the bleeding, and we have done that. And it's such a good feeling. You could see the euphoria in the players. You could see it from the supporters. And by no means perfect, but it's a starting block and something from which these lads can build on. They've had so many punches, bloody noses, had to contend with so many pressures associated with wearing the jersey. And now they get to experience what it's like. And I hope that it's the type of experience now that sets them up for more of those type of evenings.
Let's start with how it finished, because that was a fun moment. Festi Ebosele, welcome to the party. That was a very special kind of moment or two from him, wasn't it?
That was incredible in terms of how confident he was. And Heimir said about that, he could see that he was confident leading into the game. A big call, the fact that he was brought in, much made of Matt Doherty not making the squad, and it was to create a pathway for him. And then when you're on the bench, you've probably seen how the game's evolving, and you want someone to come on and recognise how they can impact. And he was just so positive. I mean, to take those two players on at that stage of a game, but then the quality of the cross with his so-called weaker foot, it was a brilliant, tantalising cross, coupled with the fact then that the touch by Brady was just sublime, sets himself up, his eyes lit up. He knew if the contact on the touch was good, he would have a shooting opportunity, and he took it. And now you have to kind of give credit to the manager, because we often say about making decisions within a game in terms of your game management. How can you influence the result? He went after it. And the fact that the likes of Festi was in advanced wing back on the right-hand side and Brady's in advanced wing back on the left-hand side to create and score the goal. And they're the type of substitutions that were made to kind of sacrifice the likes of Smodic and Benny to come off when you're chasing the game, which was a bold decision when you're thinking, no matter how tired they were, they're two of your biggest goal threats. He made a decision to take them off, and what a difference it made.
Yeah. Right wing back to left wing back is a nice way to win a game, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, you're so right about Baselli. So initially, when he stood up by Pukki and the other defender, I've seen Pukki look a little more svelte in his time. I think maybe he's maybe not. Not
yeah. It's that old one of forwards coming back defending. You just literally don't want them anywhere near your defensive third.
Yeah, but there's an intelligence in Baselli's part to stand them up, have a look, and actually, do you know what? That gap's on. But I agree totally on the cross. How many times on a weaker left foot, ball running away from you, is that cross going to go first man, not get the loft on it? He's kind of got a curious, very distinctive technique, doesn't he?
Yeah, listen, we don't do him a disservice, and I hope that we see more of those left-footed crosses, but it kind of looked a little bit of a swinger, but who cares? But the delivery was like, I mean, we talk about and we laud about left-foot deliveries of Wes Hoolahan for Robbie Brady's most famous goal for Ireland against Italy all those years ago. But that quality of that cross was up there. It was sensational at that stage of the game, and Robbie Brady made that decision to attack from deep at the back post, could probably see that deep defender had gone underneath the ball. So for his focus, because as that ball's coming on, even in that kind of moment, everything slows down where if that first touch is good, I've got a massive chance to score the winner here.
Yeah.
And he had that, and we know about Robbie's technique. We've seen it so often at left foot. But that touch was just brilliant. It really was. It was a great way to win a game.
Yes, and it's so easy when you know the importance of that first touch. It's a touch. Yeah. He wouldn't give that touch a second thought on the halfway line, but when it's that moment and that pressure, very easy to do something a little bit off.
Yeah, absolutely. The spin on the ball that's coming into him, more often than not, it will hit your side, your instep of your foot, and it will just go off. But he cushioned it, took it back inside himself, didn't have to break his stride, and then just struck through the ball. Brilliant finish,
yeah. And in fairness, the last one in Baselli, I haven't seen much of him at Watford. He's only played 3 games this season. I'm sure people are generally aware of his story. He was born in Enniscorthy and he went over to Derby, caught the eye obviously playing locally in Wexford, went over to Derby County. Yeah. They went into administration, Udinese swooped, and now he's starting this season-long loan at Watford. I haven't seen a huge amount of him, but there were other moments, Gary, where he could beat players, and he did it a few times. But what was, the added little bit of encouragement is there was one moment where he'd beaten a player or two, and I guess you'd forgive a winger for just putting it into the area, but actually he hit a low pass. It wasn't it was a low pass to, it might have been Ferguson or somebody on the edge of the area, but he picked somebody out, and I thought, God,
Troy Parrott. It was for Troy Parrott's goal, and it was, and you're right, Joe, so right, because even for a young player, and especially when it's the context that you're playing for your country, you're a rookie still at this level, but to have that composure is so impressive because he's strong, he's powerful, he's direct, so you can get your head down in those situations and be running at the defender. But the key to those type of situations is then being able to get your head up and assess what's around you. Where's the spare man? Troy Parrott had pulled to the edge of the box, and he put a lovely pass into him that Troy could, had to manufacture a little drop shoulder and then get the strike. It was straight at the goalkeeper. But on another day, that's another assist. So in terms of what he did, so positive. I was delighted with that a young player comes in and impacts like that. And it's something that the rest of the young players should look at and think, well, listen, if he can do it, I can do it.
The game overall then, if you were watching, if you're watching as a neutral,
come on, Joe, you're a wordsmith. Come on, put the right words attached to the game.
If you were watching that as a neutral, that game, it looked exactly what it was, which was 64th against 62nd in the world.
Yeah, 2 teams struggling really in terms of confidence, being regardless of the ranking, just having a difficult time. So the game was on a knife's edge. We're delighted with the win, of course we are, but that could quite easily have gone the other way. There was a massive sliding doors moment with that Cowman header right a minute before Robbie Brady goes up the other end and scores. And I would have feared for this group, Joe, then if that had happened, because another defeat and the context of it, bearing in mind it's against Finland. If you're not going to beat Finland, who are you going to beat? And that would have been the argument aimed at them. Yeah. But there's a famous, there's a saying attached to Finland in terms of their character about Sisu. That's what they say. It's about determination, grit, resilience. And I think we in the green shirt showed all that. And I was so proud in terms of the way that they did fight back, because there was periods in that second half that they started. They came out at half-time and they looked strong, Ireland, and they really had the momentum, but they gave it back to Finland. And this is something they're going to have to address going forward, is having that ability to, when you have got the opposition, turn the screw on and really keep the pressure on. And they didn't. And if you think about that massive Kamara chance, Galvez had a chance as well from left back, which he's sure. So that invariably, that's 3 big chances that went our way. And maybe this team is due a little bit of luck. And we say about being a good manager, sometimes it's better to be a lucky one. And I think we were at times, but we've been on the other end of that, this group of players, where they've been unlucky. And so often this kind of squad has found ways to lose games. So it's just lovely last night to see that they actually found a way to win the game. So, we talk about what they need. And I think it was very obvious that they've gone back to basics. They've gone back to a way that is synonymous with Irish teams of the past. And I'm not saying that they're going to be anywhere near Jack's team, but I think going forward, they need to simplify it, and they need to be able to keep the pressure on the opposition in a way they haven't been able to do over the last number of years. And they just need to build on that. And I think they'll look at the positives, enjoy the moment, of course, because they've had so few of them. But they need to really focus now going on to the game against Greece.
I couldn't agree more with all of that. And I dare say, even on that luck point, and we tried all these cliches, but there is truth. There are truth in cliches. And a penny for Stephen Kenny's thoughts when Kamara misses that gilt-edged chance, or the header goes inches wide. I dare say he was sitting at home, and I would have forgiven him for thinking to himself, I didn't get many of those breaks. Yeah, no,
exactly. And even if we go back to the Greece game, Joe, there are 3 really pivotal moments in that game, as comfortable as Greece were in beating us. But we had 3 massive chances, 2 for Alan Brown, 1 for Jason Knight, before the 60th minute. Now, if any of them goals go in, it changes the complexion of the game. Goals change games. You're talking about cliches. We know that. And it does. And it just creates pressure on the opposition that you've scored when you're on top. And too many times this Ireland team hasn't managed to do that. They did, in terms of even the first goal, started that second half so strongly. They were poor, Finland. They obviously are a team playing with a little confidence. The supporters, their own home supporters, were not particularly happy with them. But when the moments are happening, you have to take advantage. And it's a brilliant delivery by Brady, sensational header by Scales. I mean, the delivery is the type you dream of as a centre-back going up for them situations. But nevertheless, what a header. And then suddenly we're back in the game. And the whole complexion changes then. And you're right, Stephen Kenny would have had scenarios where he thought, well, we had big chances. We didn't take them. We didn't take them in the last game against Greece, but we took them last night. And as a result, we get the result.
In terms of the kind of tactical setup, I guess we're in the process of getting to know how Hallgrímsson is going to set up. So to a lot of people's eyes, it was back 3 in possession, Brady pushing on, and then kind of a 4-4-2 vibe, give or take, out of possession. How did you see it, though? What did you make of how
it's interesting. A lot of people saying the back 3. I immediately saw it as an orthodox back 4, by the very fact that Darragh O'Shea was so tight to the touchline on the right-hand side. I know, and Heimir said for us not to get bogged down with formations because they're going to try and be fluent. And I think we're seeing that throughout the world of football in terms of, where your positions are recovery, in possession, where they are out of possession. So that wouldn't faze me, essentially. But I did think there were some big calls, because Heimer's talked about he wants to identify who's his best 11, and he's going to continue playing for them. He said that our results and the poor performances or the poor results that we've had over the years is because we changed the team too much. Well, he had some big changes in that call. It was interesting that like Aziz to come into midfield, so many different players coming in. And, going forward, you're looking at his selections and you're thinking, okay, well, if you're not going to the games, you're picking these teams from Y-Scout that he's always watching him. He's obviously seen something that he can work with. So
yeah, I think actually, sorry to interrupt, he had definitely said he had gone to a few games in England, and actually one of the games was to see Azaz in person recently.
Yeah, well, I like Aziz. I think he's a quality player in terms of what he can give you. So it was a bold call. It really was, in terms of how little time he'd have had on the training ground with him. But
how did he do for you? How did he do for you, Gary?
Yeah, I thought he was good. I think as a collective, apart from maybe Robbie Brady and Kelleher in goal, I think the majority of the team can play better than what they did.
Okay.
I think as a collective, I was delighted with the result, but individually, I think performances will need to improve dramatically. And I do think those players are capable of better. You're right what you say about Azaz in terms of midfield. I think he's got good ball carrying ability. There's no doubt about that. Drops back into midfield, will thicken it up, can get us up the pitch. But even he and all the others, can play better than what they did last night. I genuinely believe that, and that bodes well for the future in my mind.
Yes. So sorry, I took you in a diversion there. In general terms, you'd no problems with the way he set the team up?
Oh no, listen, I've kept saying this, Joe. I think it's important that the manager simplifies it for this group so that they can bridge the gap that maybe we're lacking in individual quality and try and create it in the collective. I've no problem with that. I've had no problem with that throughout Ireland's history in football in terms of making it difficult for the opposition. I think the way he's done it, I think it's important that these players understand the roles. And if you listen to a lot of the comments, which were coming out of the camp, and I'm always mindful in terms of what lads are saying in press conferences, because they've got to say something, and the reality is they're just going to say the generic type of stuff. But they did say that they felt more comfortable with what was expected of them, and you would hope that will become more so as the time spent together on the training field increases over the next few months.
So say he's having a think about things as he's trying to hit in this really core starting 11. Based on last night and to a lesser extent the other two games, but largely on last night, who do you think he looked at and thought, yeah, you're definitely in, you're definitely in, you're definitely in? How close is he, do you think, to getting that real core of 7, 8, 9, 10?
Oh, yeah, no, I think he's quite close now. I think definitely going into the game, as frustrating an evening as it was for Szmodics, I think he really likes him, the manager. That's obvious. And I really like him as well. And I think that the kind of the test for Heimir and his coaches is finding the position where Szmodics really does impact the game. And notably, that is being in and around the penalty box and within striking distance and getting closer to Evan. And if you think about Evan's strengths as well, more often than not, and we see it at Brighton, it's coming short, coming onto the play. So as a result, then we need runners in behind. And I wouldn't think Szmodics is particularly quick, but he's sharp. So we have to get him closer to Evan, and you want to get Ogbeni as well in those closer areas up the pitch. Who I thought Ogbeni done a lot of work defensively, but he wasn't at his brilliant best, I feel, in terms of just how much work he had to do and from how deep he was doing it. So it will be slight adjustments like that. I think he'll look at the perform. I think O'Shea and obviously Collins, but they're nailed on. Of course they are. But Collins, for the talent that he has to stop these mistakes. As simple as that. It's something that's aimed at all us young centre halves when we start, but as a kind of captain and given that honour, which is a great honour. And I loved hearing his reaction to it and what he said his family felt about it, because it resonates with me in terms of when you represent Ireland and you have the honour of wearing the armband, what it does mean for you as a professional. And you kind of say, yeah, well, listen, this is my role. But for your family, it's wonderful. So it was lovely to hear that. But I would give some context to think that I'm not convinced the armband is the best thing for him at this moment in time, because I think it takes away from his concentration levels in terms of him being more concerned about playing the role of captain rather than just leading by example. And the reason why he got the armband is probably because of that. I think some more of the senior players probably have to say to him, just be yourself. Don't try and change anything. That's why you've got the armband. But I don't know. He's just been culpable for too many goals for a player of his ability in recent games. Yeah,
it's strange. There is kind of an age vacuum in the squad. I mean, it's a bigger conversation about Irish football, but we sort of went off a cliff in the 90s, kids born in the 90s producing, like Robbie Brady and Hendrick were kind of that 1992 era. There's a big old gap. And Collins even talked this week about the captaincy, and he said, a lot of the older lads have left, and so it's time for us to step up. But I agree with you. You can see this is a relatively young professional playing the role of leader a little bit, as opposed to maybe being the leader, and that's going to have a certain weight. On the mistakes thing, it's been a facet of his club career as well. I mean, he does so well in so many ways, and it could be a rash challenge and a red card, or it could be a mistake like last night. It's a strange one, because just like 2 weeks ago in the Premier League, he's waltzing by several Wolves players, shifts the ball outside to the wing, gets on the end of the cross and heads it in, and you're thinking, this guy, so much ability. And then you therefore, when you put that next to the mistake last night, I can't understand. I can't kind of explain away the mistake. What do you think he was trying to do? What do you think actually happened in that moment?
Listen, there'll be no player who doesn't make a short pass or something like that. So, and Heimer's come out and says it's a basic mistake. But you're right, Joe, because we've watched him so much and because we put so much stock into his ability and what he can potentially become. And I know he's a Premier League centre back at the moment, but he can become a very, very good one because all the attributes are there. But when you do watch him, and we have watched him, and myself and Richard Dunn were covering the game last night. Right. And we're probably looking at a scenario and thinking, for me, we both kind of think just the concentration levels. He just needs some really focus on that. And it's difficult at international level because there'll be periods where you don't have the ball for a lot. And that used to always be the most draining thing coming off that game. Not necessarily the physical demands of it, but the concentration levels. And I know he's playing against probably, well, no doubt he's playing against better centre forwards in the Premier League than he is against Finland. But there's just something, and the emotion that's attached with being in the Ireland jersey and, of course, the armband. I just feel that, I generally believe he's got a couple more gears to go. I do think there's so many attributes there, and I'm desperate for him to do it. I'm such a big fan of him, and that's why the frustration is that just concentrate, come on, really focus. And it's hard, you know what I mean, at times in those situations because of what's happening around you and stuff like that. But he has to get that into his game. And I'm sure with the coaching at Brentford and certainly with the likes of Paddy McCarthy, John O'Shea, who are centre-backs themselves by trade, they'll be banging that drum into him.
Yes. You were also mentioning Smolix there. I think everybody can kind of see the brightness to his play.
Yeah.
Would you go so far as saying, listen, let's get you off trucking up and down that left wing. Let's get you central where Finn Azaz was. Is that like that kind of number 10 role? Is that where you want to see him long term?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be overly fussed in terms of where he starts, but you're right. I genuinely don't want to see him dogging back to left back and covering Brady and which he's a willing runner. He doesn't shirk that responsibility, which is great. But you do feel that energy should be spent better in and around Ferguson, Linkpay, Ogbene, whoever it is. I think he's going to have to find that Heimer in terms of who can really sometimes you can get combinations and they just really spark. And at times, whenever we've played Ferguson, even if it was with Adam Eder in terms of in the European qualifiers last season, it doesn't seem that any one player kind of sparks that partnership that we're so desperately looking for. So he has to find an answer there in terms of getting those players within sight of goal, because I believe that they can score goals at this level. I genuinely do. So that's something he's going to have to work on. But it's whether or not by doing that, do you sacrifice something elsewhere? They're all the questions he's going to have to start looking into. Yeah.
How about Cullen and Knight in that midfield area, Gary?
Yeah, I thought it was a difficult evening in terms of what they had to do. The game. The one thing will always be a problem for me and has been and was again last night is that no matter what system you're trying to play, our ball retention is just it's way below where it has to be at international level. It's simple as that. We give the ball away far too often. If you think about people like Cullen, continuity player, I couldn't believe how often he gave the ball away. And it wasn't just him. It was Brady as well with that sweet left foot, just kicked it out of play, trying to switch for play. And it's those moments, Joe, that they really have to understand, these lads, is that by giving the ball back, any type of pressure that you're trying to build just suddenly goes because it gives the ball back to the opposition. They can have a breather. And this is something that, that famous saying of Jack Charlton's is put them under pressure. And you have to do that. And you have to recognise that just by a loose pass takes that all away. Anything you were trying to build, and we had such momentum when we got that equalising goal into that second half. You're thinking, right, go on and win this game. But we didn't. I don't know whether or not in chasing the equaliser, the mentality was like, well, listen, we've got to go for it. Listen, let's just throw caution to the wind. Let's go after it. And then they got it. And then the mindset seemed to be like, oh, God, we better protect this. And they dropped a little bit deeper. Passes were a little bit looser. And then all of a sudden, the momentum's back with Finland. And you're thinking, this game's at risk now when we look like we're going to win it. We look like we're going to lose it. So it's just little moments like that. And whoever is in that midfield, that is your biggest priority, is that you keep hold of that ball and you just don't give it away.
Yeah, that is our perennial problem, though. I mean, I almost can't, maybe I'm beaten down. I just can't imagine a situation where our ball retention is really good.
Yeah, but Joe, I think people kind of get carried away with this. As if it's a fanciful notion that you're able to like flick balls around corners and great diags and brilliant. It's just basic passes that we're giving it away. It's not.
I know.
It's not even attempting like defense splitting passes. It's simple stuff.
But we just, I mean, you'd look at some of the mistakes we make in possession across several years now, and you'd look at each individual mistake in isolation, and you'd say, well, listen, don't worry about that. That's just a really good player made a one-off silly mistake.
Yeah.
But actually, you are what you do. And we do that continuously, unfortunately. I don't know why, but we are that team. We do.
Yeah, and it's like, and people can say, it's inexperienced, it's the rookie lads. No, it's not. It's our seasoned players. You know, Seamus Coleman's as guilty as anyone is doing it. And you think about how good a player he is and how experienced he is. And you're right, it's a collective. It's something that has to be addressed. And I know we're going to play a bit more direct, but even in that game, Joe, you see the start where the ball goes out to Scales. He's got all the time in the world. He gets closed down.
Yeah.
It's a simple ball. And then when they did have time to just clip a ball up to Ferguson, who's a big lad, so it hasn't even got to be bang on. It just has to be in and around him. They were overhitting it by 10 yards, 15 yards over his head. And I'm thinking, how can we possibly build any type of momentum if you just can't clip an unopposed ball up to your centre forward, who's great at receiving it? So that bar, that low bar, has to go considerably higher for us to go where we need to go.
Yeah, I'll remain hopeful as opposed to expectant.
So am I.
How do you think Ferguson did in the context of 19-year-olds short on match fitness?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you can see the quality is there. I don't doubt that one bit, but you know, you're right in terms of you kind of get that confidence by playing games. It's as simple as that. And he needs to play more games. He also needs to get better service. He has to have people around him in a way that when, listen, I know he's playing every day and training every day with the lads at Brighton, but whenever he seems to play for Brighton, I know prior to his injury, there's great quality balls into him. There's runners he can off the back of him, which I think he needs, because if we have that threat in behind, when he then drops deep, he can get on the half turn and drive forward and do things. But yeah, I think it's a slow process, but I'll definitely take it as a bonus that he has got those minutes under his belt last night.
Yeah. So before you go, a word on Athens Sunday. They beat England last night. They're a good team. There's obviously going to be there's obviously a tragic and emotional backdrop to Greek football at the moment. So there's going to be a minute's silence before the game. You can imagine the intensity that's going to be in that camp. That is going to be very, very different to what we saw last night.
Yeah, I mean, so emotionally draining, and they kind of used that as a motivational tool last night in terms of what they were trying to do for their loved teammate as such, which was just awful news when that came through. The emotion aside, it was a brilliant performance by Greece. It really was, and they exploited how defensively poor England were. I couldn't believe how vulnerable England were on the transition. Lee Carsley tried to fit all these attacking players in, and that's all well and good going forward. But on counter-attacks, Greece just tore them apart. And people may well look at that result and think a late winner, was it backs to the wall stuff? No, it wasn't. They had so many opportunities, Greece. And that will be something that we'll have to look at, no doubt about that. The very fact that they beat us on the last three occasions. But do you know what, Joe? In terms of just how much it may well have taken out of them physically and emotionally, there's an opportunity for us kind of going there with confidence. Maybe the Greeks will be overconfident. I don't know on the back of the England result, but I don't go there with any real trepidation, real fear. I literally look at this as an opportunity for us to build on what was a brilliant away result, not necessarily a brilliant away performance, but at this stage it's about results in terms of trying to build a little bit of confidence amongst this squad, and hopefully now we'll see it in Greece.
Yeah, well, I think we're going to talk Monday, and Damon Delaney will be with us as well, so we'll have a good final word on the on these two games. Just by the way, on Carsley, because I think we're all kind of looking with interest and hoping he does well. People wouldn't have seen the game necessarily because they were watching Ireland last night, but to let people know, he went with Cole Palmer as a 6 alongside Declan Rice, and then Saka and Gordon on the wings, and Foden and Bellingham ahead of Palmer and Rice in kind of false 9 type roles. Kane injured, Watkins came off the bench. Barney Ronay, for instance, on Twitter said something to the effect of manager picks team based on reading the internet and consequences are hilarious. And what he's getting at there is you just get all the best players on the pitch, which is what fans want, as opposed to kind of a balance to the team. It's funny with Carsley, if he had the job and he tried something like this in a Nations League campaign, I would have said, geez, no problem. Maybe Palmer, he's so bloody good, maybe he can do a 6. Maybe this could work. Try it. I just thought, when you're auditioning and there's already a degree in England of, well, who is this guy exactly? Just from a PR point of view, even if you think this is something you want to try when you get the job, no problem. Don't do anything silly. don't do something that you can be ridiculed by an unfair media portrayal of what you've done. You know what I mean? This is just like in the media, it's like, oh, this guy, what's he thinking? Clearly this is terrible. And look, the same guys pre-game may have been saying, oh, this is exciting, but of course, you know, hindsight is perfect. I just thought from a PR point of view, don't do something that gives them a stick to hit you with. And he's kind of done that here.
Yeah, it does. The reaction will be that. But ultimately, as England manager, you're going to be judged. You know, you might win games, but you're still going to get huge pressure for the players you've left out. Sure. And if I give you an insight, Lee Carsley is not going to pick a team based on getting the best players. He must have seen something that he potentially thought could work, but it didn't. It really didn't. And as much as you talk about getting your offensive players in there, what it did show is that the likes of Trent Alexander-Arnold just can't protect the team on transition. We was in that midfield area. And to a certain extent, Declan Rice as a deep line midfielder can't play on a half turn to get England playing the way that Gomez did. So these are lessons learned. So and in the usual context, you'd be saying, okay, well, the manager's found out something valuable last night. Yeah. But we're not talking about that. The reaction will now be, oh, tactically inept, that the Greek manager took him on and exploited his lack of experience at this level. You know all the nonsense, Joe. We've seen it all before. But the reality will be, and people will say, well, maybe Southgate was right to be defensive with this team. I don't believe any of that. I still think Lee Carsley is a brilliant coach. I still think there's an opportunity there for him to bring that team forward. But as you quite rightly said, that is a dreadful result in terms of wanting to get the job and in terms of what the noise will be now surrounding that.
You've got a flight to catch. Thank you so much. Let's chat Monday. Hopefully another good Irish result. Gary Breen, thank you.
Thanks, mate.
There you go. Gary Breen, Ronan and Conan back with us. Gary, like the rest of us, not under the illusions it was the world's greatest performance, but we just don't care anymore. We're that desperate. We don't care anymore. It's going to be a long time before we're talking about quality of performance. Yeah, we won, but was it good enough performance? We're not there yet.
Am I that beaten down that I enjoyed the performance? I thought it was a good performance. Even when it was 1-0 in the first half, I thought, geez, this is going all right.
Yeah, and there's like sequences of possession where you're like, 3, 4, 5 passes. Yeah. I'm like, oh, well.
Yeah, Ferguson got the ball in the box at one stage. You know, he didn't get a shot, but you know, it was like, oh, look at that, we built up.
Yeah,
but you could see the unbridled emotion in the crowd. I thought that was a nice moment for those people who've traipsed around all corners of Europe following this team without many goals as much as wins. And it was a big release for them, you know.
Well, on that note, Heimir Hallgrímsson was talking about the crowd. He was saying, I've never experienced 1,000 travelling supporters before. He was kind of touched by the whole thing. So to get that stadium experience, to get what Heimir Hallgrímsson was saying in a bit more detail and some of the players as well, happy to bring in Aidan Fitzmaurice of the Irish Independent, who's currently in Helsinki Airport. Aidan, hello.
Hi, Joe. How's it going?
I'm told it's a nice airport, actually.
It's one of the best in Europe for that level of passengers. So they like they don't much boast about it in Finland, but they do like the fact that Helsinki Airport wins awards.
Well, they can't boast about their football. What? We showed them.
Exactly, and I think the emotion, I suppose, at half time. I mean, I think they were. You mentioned the crowd earlier on, and a lot of people have been asking me about the booing from the Ireland fans, which we saw at home last month and away, and I wouldn't say there was about 1,000 of them. I wouldn't say all Ireland fans were booing at halftime, but there was a cohort where there was gesticulations, there was fists being waved. They were unhappy with what they'd seen, and they were right, because the first half was very poor, an awful lot of mistakes, no real pattern to play. But whatever was done at halftime and the shape and the energy they saw for the second half was a lot better. So those, as I've been at the airport at the moment, a lot of those fans are already en route to Athens, a good few here around the airport at the moment, finding different ways to get that. Since it is remarkable, I think, over the years with Irish football, that's how poor the team has been. There are very few nations of our size who would bring 1,000 fans to Finland and bring another, probably the same again, to Athens on a Wednesday. That's what Heimir said with Finland. They just wouldn't. Sorry, with Iceland, they just wouldn't have had that. I doubt the Finns had 1,000 fans here when they were here last month. So it is incredible. They got the rewards, and I think, as you said earlier, the level of performance. It was a win that mattered. A win was needed at all costs, and they got the win.
I that had passed me by, the booing or the gesticulation at halftime. Obviously, maybe on the TV feed, I guess the Finnish crowd cheering was much louder. You would have been able to see the Irish fans directly. I guess that does speak to the frustration. We were sitting right beside them, but we could see it, and you could see that's why after some of it addressed to Robbie Brady, because again, Robbie didn't have a particularly good first half, and when Robbie ran over to the fans after scoring,
It was one of those where you wonder what's he going to do. Is he going to do the ear cupped ear gesture or whatever? But certainly there was. I think sometimes the team respond to the does the crowd inspire the team, or does the team inspire the crowd? And really, I think and Heimer mentioned this after that in the second half, they really did seem to be on the wavelength, and they urged them on. Those last tricky minutes when Finland were on top, had the chance that they missed, that they should have been 2-1 up. And then there really was a buzz about Festi, and I think the last time I saw that was James McLean, the early James McLean playing for Ireland, where he did seem to lift the crowd. The crowd who were there last night just really did seem to get some buzz off Festi, and he just thrived off it, and was this remarkable kind of symbiosis where the Irish crowd and the Irish team were really inspired by Festi, and Festi was magnificent. And watching celebrations at the end, the players were all down with the Irish fans. They all kind of took a step back and pushed Festi forward. For him to get the acclaim for his role in the goal. So nice. Yeah, it was remarkable, because it has been tough times watching Ireland over the last couple of years for those fans. So it's glad for them to get the reward, and especially for Festi, who hasn't really featured a lot recently, but didn't make squads, didn't make teams. I think he's been quite unhappy at his game time, which a lot of players are. But he got his rewards last night, and it answered the gamble of leaving up Matt Doherty. We may have found our right back.
Yeah. Justifiably unhappy on the basis of how he played, maybe. Stay with us, Aidan. I just want to see what the boys think of that. God, I don't want us to turn into a nation of booers. It's the man's third game. I know they're booing the bigger picture and the team at large, but geez, you pays your money, you're allowed boo. But I don't love to hear that.
As you mentioned in previous shows, I think there was maybe an overabundance of patience with the previous Stephen Kenny regime that maybe we've kind of reached our limit with that. So we're more of a typically patient football fandom, I would say, that maybe the mechanics behind the scenes haven't always been so patient, but I think we tend to get behind our managers, and all of a sudden that felt like a make or break game last night, so it was a big result. Yeah,
really big for Hallgrímsson, Aidan. He needed, just because of the atmosphere, the appointment process, 2 years where we've only beaten Gibraltar. This guy had not been given much of a honeymoon, no real credit in the bank. It feels big for him. Do you sense, I know you caught a bit of his press conference, did you sense that in his body language or his demeanour, that he knew that this was a very big night for him?
He was quite calm. I mean, he did go down to the players went down initially, and then Heimir went down himself and applauded them, and he's quite calm again. I think he's different to the person who's come in from, someone like Martin O'Neill. I mean, he had such big games at all levels, particularly with Celtic and in the Premier League, where he went to Anfield and Old Trafford and these places, and particularly with Celtic in the European games, trying to get big games. In Ibrox at least twice a season. Heimir probably hasn't really had that level of. I think he has referenced the level of expectation. He just wasn't ready for the level of interest in him and in the team. And I think one thing he's dealing with is, I suppose for all managers, you're being at all levels, and GA, everything else. One of the first questions to the manager is, well, what do you think of what X said, whether it's Pat Spillane or Joe Brawley, or in this case Brian Kerr and Richard Dunn. And he has kind of said, look, he's living in Ireland, but he's not reading social media, he's not reading the papers. But I think there was criticism, and even Richard Dunn saying before the game that if they lost this one, that the pressure was already on, and Richard Dunn touting John that this was a chance for John O'Shea, which I'm not certainly sure. I mean, if Heimir falls, John O'Shea is possibly guilty by association, because he's been around now for a couple of camps. But
and sorry to interrupt you, you like on the beat such a long time. What do you make of this atmosphere? It's like we're becoming a little bit impatient here, no?
Yeah, I was surprised so early, and maybe that's because, as was early, because there was so much patience for Kenny, and Kenny was different because it was just a mad time that there was COVID, home, nobody travelling to games played in empty stadiums, players couldn't meet. That first year, 2 years of Stephen Kenny's reign was just unprecedented in international football, and we were all removed from it, because you're in the Viva with 50 people there. You're in Ireland. We're going to Slovakia for that playoff with no fans, so it was different. But there was patience for Kenny. But I think that this time, to me, I think it was unfair on Heimir. I think the focus should have been the FAI. The process was flawed, and giving him and complaining about not having time in the September window. He didn't have time because he wasn't there in March and June, and that's on the FAI for this process of long drawn out process of waiting for Heimir, saying which again it remains to be seen. That he was their man all along, and they're waiting for it. But I think he's been quite clever, and he said he got a lot of criticism for his manner is to And he's backed it up. He says he watches games on Scout. He doesn't believe in going to games every weekend, whereas Brian Kerr was the opposite. Brian Kerr famously went to 3 games in one day when he was Ireland manager in England, hopping around motorways and train stations and airports in the UK. Heimir has I think he's just a bit more chilled. He just relaxed and said, well, this is how we do things. And if other managers want to do that, if they want to go to whatever, Burnley at 11:30 and then hop in a car and be in Anfield for 3 p.m. and then get to Ewood Park for 7 p.m, let them at it. But I think he's quite calm, and because he's been there, and I think he is adjusting to a lot of things, the level of expectation. He's impressed me in this camp. I think what the calls he's made, it was a big call to leave out Matt Doherty. You know, you're leaving yourself open to criticisms there from former players, recently retired, who go that Doherty's been a loyal servant in doing that. Even in the selection, I think we're all of us, we pick our probable team. I don't think anybody had Fitzmaurice in our probable team. I think he is willing to react to things. He didn't just pick the same players again, the same squad again. The call last night, I think he will learn from it. And learning, I think one of the lessons for me last night is that Darragh O'Shea is not a right back. I think Darragh had a tough time, particularly in the first half. He's beaten for saves. I know this is being critical after a win, but I think you need to learn from the wins. To me, it's been a bit of a problem because, you know, Heimir has said Seamus and Coleman and Matt Doherty won't be around forever. Festy probably hadn't convinced a lot of people. To me, that's the lesson from last night, is that maybe, you know, we need to get Darragh O'Shea into the centre of that defence and trust Festy to play right back. But he's a clever guy. He's not wedded to his beliefs. He was willing to make those calls, and that's a big call. Leaving out Matt Doherty is a big call. Yeah. Leaving out Troy Parrott was a call. I think Troy might start. I think the next one now, I think, will be what he does with Evan Ferguson for Sunday. He was asked after, will he be fit to start? That's going to be a big call. I think Evan looked quite laboured. He looked like somebody who isn't fully fit, who hasn't had much game time. I thought Evan just seemed to have a very frustrating night. I spent a lot of the night watching him, and just things weren't falling for him. Shots, maybe Evan just needs a game. We have to remember Evan Ferguson is a guy who had serious surgery on his ankle only in April. So Evan needs to run a game. So I would think it would make sense, for example, possibly to give Evan a break from the starting 11 in Athens and give Troy a run, or Alameda, and then give Evan 20 minutes off the bench. But he's a clever guy, Heimir, you know, and he is learning, and that's what I like about him. He's not just wedded. I think certain other managers would have had Matt Doherty and Alan Brown. The easy thing to do would have been to have Matt Doherty and Alan Brown in the squad. He didn't do that, and I like the fact that he's done that.
The way you're talking there, Aidan, it reminds me of something that I thought of last night watching the match, where it was just this novel collection of players, and it was something fun about that. It's like, I haven't seen these guys play together. Do you think that's coming from Heimir basically being parachuted in as, you know, for the want of a better word, an outsider? He's not coming with biases. He doesn't have any baggage. He doesn't have any loyalties, or he doesn't have any preconceptions about players. He's actually just looking at Scout, like you say, thinking who would be the best player for me in these positions, and then he just throws them together. Is there something nice about that?
It is, and he's looked at it. That's why we're wondering. It's essentially the same squad with one or two, and again, different changes. I mean, Fitzmaurice didn't make the last squad. He wasn't good enough to be in the squad last time, and then he's in the team. So he's willing to make those calls. But I think he knows now what he has. We asked him at one of the press conferences with a squad announcement, like, was there, given that the last window was so poor, was there anybody who you felt was close? I mean, names are in my mind where someone like Gavin Molloy, who's been playing very well for Aberdeen in the SPL, that maybe someone like him, could he break in? And the only name he mentioned really was Colin Coventry, who's been on the squad before, been in the senior squad, been around the scene for a while. So it's not as if there's a list of 5 or 6 players who are kind of just about ready to come in and are going to pop in. This is what we have. He will deal with whatever he has. So he knows what he has. He may dip into 21s. I think if the 21s didn't have a qualifier of their own, he may have chosen one or two of those. Maybe they might come in, you know, as a campaign drags on. But we'll see. This is what he has. But making the most of the tools he has.
Okay. Just the last one. I know you were down and you heard from some of the players. Strikes me they've really not done, a lot of these guys, many media duties after winning. So like, must have been kind of nice for them to be asked questions, you know, why did it go wrong again today?
It was, and to admit as well that the first half wasn't great, that it's not perfect. It is an understanding that it's about the result. I think there was a temptation not to go back being critical of Stephen Kenny, but one of the things I was critical of Stephen Kenny for was constantly praising the performances in defeats. Stephen Kenny often referenced the performance in Slovakia, the Euro playoff that we lost, the performance against Serbia, you know, that good. Stephen Kenny talked up performances. when to me he should have been talking up results. I think that did change later on. I think that penny did drop with Stephen Kenny later on. I think they realise now that the result is all that matters. And Trapattoni was great for this. He would often tell the players, if you want a performance, go to La Scala. If you want a result, that's what football is for. And to take that, they needed that. And these players haven't had the winning experience. A lot of revisionism, not even going back to the Charlton years, but even I think a couple of days ago was the anniversary of the win in Wales under Martin O'Neill, when again didn't play particularly well. It wasn't great football. I was at the game, but we beat Bales 1-0 on the break. That those moments where nobody cared that night. The Irish fans in Cardiff that night didn't care one bit how the team played. They got a 1-0 win. And to bring that back and to talk down performances, and Heimir spoke about that in advance. And I think that will come as he said. One other interesting he said as well, Joe, was that he's eased off training time and did a lot of talk about meetings and having players talking to each other. And I think he realises that time together as a group, it's very fractured. You come in and you're coming and going, and the first day Troy Park couldn't train the Monday because he trained on Sunday. That he felt it was more important for these players to get to know each other as a team. And again, I think he draws a lot of his experience with Iceland. I think we're going to see an awful lot more little tricks. How did he play a part? He was a manager initially. He was assistant and then co-manager and then manager in his own right. But drawing on things from Iceland, how do you do that? And maybe, again, he's doing it his own way. So it's not a case of flogging them doing 3 hour. One of the criticisms of the June camp, for example, was that players looked tired because they'd done too much work. They were doing too long in the training session. Heimir seems to, I think he's learned from that. He's gone the other way, that maybe we're better off. These guys, they're fully fit, they're professionals, they know what they're doing. Maybe we're better off just having meetings and players hanging around the hotel together and getting to know. I don't know what they're doing in the hotel. Are they playing table tennis? Are they sitting around? Are they drinking coffee? But getting to know each other more as a group. And I think we saw that in the second half, the way the team bonded and responded. The team grew with confidence. And you could see that in the performance and the result. I think it is going to be difficult, and I think it's going to be. I've never experienced this situation with the George Baldock situation, where this Greek team have lost not a recent player, a current player, a teammate, a friend. I can't honestly remember that in my time covering football, where a player has died in camp. So it is going to be very emotional. There wasn't a brilliant crowd for the last home game. I think a lot of situations now, I think the Greeks are going to have a good crowd for this one. So that is an element for Ireland to deal with. That emotion, it's going to be a hugely emotional night for the Greeks to play at home just days after George Baldock died. So that's going to be a factor. But I do think the pressure is off because of the result. So I think coping with that. But certainly I see a team that's a lot more confidence, a lot more spirit, a lot more. And they have know-how is huge in football, Joe, knowing how to win a game. This team haven't done that for a long, long time. They've done it now, third game in for Heimir. They won a game away to Finland, and more of the same.
Absolutely. Well, listen, flight beckons for you. It's a difficult packing challenge, Aidan. 10 kgs, you're managing Finland and Athens. I mean, you've got Bermuda shorts on.
Jumpers and gloves and hats and everything else for Helsinki. And it's 30 degrees in Athens. I think the fans certainly, it's very pricey. It's strange to find somewhere in Europe that's more expensive than Dublin, but kind of €20 for a pizza, €12 for a glass of wine or a beer. I think the fans would be relieved to get to somewhere more affordable in Athens than Helsinki. But I think that won't affect the game. I mean, it's 9:45 local time kickoff, so it'll be easy enough. But certainly, I think just everybody, Irish football, we're not part of that. The media, we're a very small part of it, but the team, the supporters, the FAI, the staff, everybody else, I think just everybody's mood is a little bit lifted going to Athens, and we can enjoy it. I think going to Athens with another defeat would have been huge pressure, and now it's turned. Now all the pressure is on Lee Carsley. Yeah, wow, we were just talking about that. It sure is. Yep. Listen, you bring those expensive receipts home. There's no trouble there. Stamped, approved. Thanks so much. Much obliged, Aidan Fitzmaurice. Thank you. Thanks, Joe. Aidan Fitzmaurice in Helsinki. Will they all get colds? I think all the journalists and fans, that you go from Ireland to Helsinki weather, then to Greek weather, back to Irish weather. I just think there's too much going on there for your system. You're just going to catch a chill somewhere. Yeah, it's a mess. It's an interesting scheduling by UEFA in general, but to give them some credit, these would normally be friendly games. So we would have been playing Finland in a friendly last night. There does seem to be a bit more something about this result. It is a competitive game in a competition that didn't exist a couple of years ago, but at the same time, it does give us maybe a momentum that we wouldn't have had from just a routine friendly win. Huge credit to UEFA.
They've actually, reasonably quickly in terms of how these things tend to move, they've accepted that friendlies died somewhere during the Sven-Goran Eriksson era, 11 substitutions, half time, and so they've responded. Like, it's what a blot in the landscape they were, and now we have something very decent. It's great.
Joe, I don't think UEFA get enough love. So I just thought it was worth me pointing out that they get a hard time for what they've done to the Champions League, but the Nations League is not bad.
I tell you who's not getting love. So Lee Carsley's England won, Greece 2 at Wembley. England have lost to Greece for the first time in their history. This, of course, in our group, we'd be vaguely interested anyway. But, of course, the Lee Carsley thing we're watching with a degree of interest. I alluded to it with Gary. He picked a very attacking lineup. Cole Palmer and Declan Rice as the sixes. And then it was Foden behind Bellingham. Bellingham behind Foden. One a false 9, one a 10. But the two boys there ahead of Palmer and Rice, and Saka and Anthony Gordon on the wings. Kane injured ahead of this game. Watkins was on the bench. He came off the bench. I made the point to Gary, and I just feel it all the more. This was just a really inexperienced thing to do if he is in any way interested in the job. It's where you needed a Bobby Robson type figure to say to him, son, I know the English media, do not do something which can give them an opportunity to go after you. And it struck me, the Guardian headline on the match report, Barney Renee's match report, was a weird attempt to reinvent. Turned out to be tactical backfire. But the headline was a weird attempt to reinvent. And you just don't want any weirdness. Like, you're still in the dating stage. Like rule one is just nothing weird. If you cut your toenails over the kitchen sink, that's fine. Yeah. You save that for married life. You don't do it early on in the courting period. And so he's done that, and that was really inexperienced. And now he's been portrayed in, like, The Guardian, who aren't necessarily, the pointed edge of how the media are going to treat him. And it's been called weird. And so he's probably killed any chance of him getting the job. Whereas if Watkins had played and it was a more orthodox formation and maybe, things had just gone badly for them, it's not necessarily a disaster. As it turned out, by the way, and Gary alluded to it, I didn't see the game. I was watching Ireland, obviously, but to read some of the match reports, I mean, it was kind of Greek dominance. So Barney Renee's report says Carsley tried to be creative in the absence of the injured Harry Kane, playing Bellingham as a false 9, Foden as a 10, Palmer in a deeper role in midfield. The system was muddled, though. Greece repeatedly sliced through England's midfield. Greece actually had 3 goals disallowed for offside, and they scored what Ronay calls a late undeserved equaliser from Jude Bellingham, and then Greece still went on and got the winner. So this was no smash and grab. This was your midfield plan completely cut open, and it's difficult for him now.
It's like the Ireland midfield in that playoff against Denmark, when they were behind at half time and O'Neill just ripped the whole engine room out just in an attempt to go for it. But the setup is weird. It is, we all want to see these amazing players on, and we often wonder, should managers be more attacking? Like, this definitely just went too far to the other end of the spectrum. It was like you're playing PlayStation, you're playing FIFA, and you're just loading your team with all these players, and you want to fit them in somewhere because it's enjoyable to play with them. I liked your point, about maybe it was worth trying Cole Palmer in midfield. Maybe that is something you could try out in the Nations League, see if it works. But what a way of stacking the deck against trying that when you're playing everybody else in this weird formation too. The right time to do that would be playing Cole Palmer there with a proper settled team. It's almost like a trial game. You get a chance to impress, but then you're playing with this mishmash of players.
And it's not outlandish. Even just funny, on Match of the Day just the other week, by a coincidence, I'm not saying that Lee Carsley took the idea from Gary Lineker, but they were talking about Palmer when he'd scored the 4 goals, and they were making the point he's so versatile, can play it, right hand side, probably left hand side, through the middle, he can do whatever you want. And Lineker said at the end of that, I think he could play 6 as well. Now, I don't think Lee Carsley went, but the point, it's not an outlandish football view to think somebody with this kind of all-round brilliance could do it in a 6. But as you say, if you're doing that little experiment, then cushion it by having a more orthodox formation around him.
But I can't get a read on, and I know we have some clips from the press conference we get to, but I can't get a read on his approach, because this is the approach of someone who's making a pitch for the job. Like, look how creative I am. I'm blooding all these youngsters. The mood music around him in this camp has been terrific. Jack Grealish says I'm reborn because of because of Lee Carsley. Not to mention all the players that he had with the under-21s, including Gordon, Palmer, Angel Gomez, who he brought in from the wilderness, and now is like people are clamouring for him to be in the starting 11. So I just think it's odd that he would make this move. And then if you look at the average positions on the pitch last night, so you've Trent Alexander-Arnold, who was another player he's brought in from the cold. And him and Palmer are adopting that right wing position. So where Palmer would usually see him for Chelsea cutting in from the right hand side, and that's where Alexander-Arnold was operating. And they're literally just stepping on each other's toes, you know.
Okay.
They're just on top of each other. So
it seemed to have been a muddle, whatever way it all transpired, really, in all the match reports. Just none of it kind of worked. And as a consequence, even with all that creativity on the pitch, England weren't remotely creative. So it just backfired on every front. Porous and then not creative. He spoke to ITV, immediate aftermath. Gabriel Clark, naturally enough, tactics were up for discussion.
We tried something different. We tried to overload the midfield and play a little bit differently. It's something that we tried for 20 minutes yesterday. It's something that we experimented with, and it was disappointing that it didn't come off. But I think it was probably unrealistic to expect too much, and I think it's a case of trying again.
Someone right now in TalkSport is screaming, and they only tried it for 20 minutes.
That's exactly what I was about to scream. I was like, hang on, was that a defence of what he had done, or was that an excuse?
Is that an indictment of me, the manager? No.
No. Because I read the headline, and it's like the pull quote from every newspaper is this: we only tried it for 20 minutes. Like, he didn't say that, and he didn't say it on TV. And oh my God,
it's just open to ridicule. Yeah. And they will ridicule you. I mean, it still is a tricky position. You think last month's campaign, the English managerial job is a tricky position. Last month's window, will not sing anthem nonsense.
Oh, yeah.
In a way that Gareth Southgate made the job look somehow doable again. Lee Carsley has reminded everybody how difficult the English job is in these two windows. Ridiculed for different reasons in both windows by an unfair media. Of course they are, but that's just the nature of the gig. And don't do the 20-minute thing. Don't volunteer that. Yeah,
it is the thing, through all the criticisms I would have had of Gareth Southgate, or shortcomings that I feel like he has, he didn't mess the job up. Like everybody else would have come in and taken his amazing team and messed it up somehow. He didn't do that. He had a consistent base level with them.
Yeah.
Did all right, got them to finals that they could have won as well on another day. But I don't like, though, the backdrop or the tone of this Lee Carsley performance now, where it's like, well, see, it's not like, why is it suddenly Southgate or Carsley? There's somewhere in between that we could pick somebody who has a bit of both.
So press conference then, he was naturally enough asked about his future. This is the second of 3 windows he's due to take.
I was quite surprised on the after the last camp, in terms of like the job's mine and like it's mine to lose and all the rest of it. No, my remit has been clear from the start. I'm doing 3 camps. There's 3 games left, and then hopefully I'll be going back to the 21s. So it's neither almost no impact.
Hopefully you'll be going back to the 21s, though. Do you not want the job permanently, or?
No, I said at the start that I won't rule myself in or out, and that's still the case. I'm more than comfortable in my position where I am. The remit was clear. I'm comfortable and confident with that. So. After the first camp, I definitely didn't get too excited or believe too much. I know that I'm very, very aware that this job is one of the best jobs in the world in terms of the you've actually got a chance of winning. Obviously, I'm talking about that after a loss, but in terms of a major competition, and that's still the case.
It's a perfectly reasonable answer, I think. But again, even that's been turned into, he doesn't even know if he wants it. Why he wants the 21s, sure. Like all of that kind of stuff has started. There's TalkSport 10 minutes. I know Troy Deeney's part of it, and the headline is like, he doesn't speak well in the media. That stuff has been now thrown at him. I always had that concern for him, I have to say, in advance. I just didn't know if he was as kind of. Well, sorry, I did know. He certainly wasn't as polished as Southgate, and obviously you go from really not having to perform those duties very often into the lion's den. It was going to be difficult for him, and it's a rough morning for him. I feel very sorry for him this morning. Like, he has been ridiculed.
Yeah, it's just like, to my earlier point, it's it doesn't quite jive for me what he's saying there, because everything he does seems to be with a view to exemplifying what he's bringing to the party. You know, he's not really setting the table for the next manager by playing this quite outlandish formation. You know what I mean? Well, I don't see Eddie Howe coming in and playing Palmer as a number 6. You know,
but maybe he's done the next manager has done a bit a service in that. It's like, well, I know that doesn't work.
That's true. But yeah, it's like, and then he's obviously taking into account what the public are saying, because during the Euros it was, we want Palmer and we want Gordon in, but not as well. Instead, you know, he's playing.
Barney Renee had the line. He's tried to come in and be the new fun stepdad.
No, but I was willing him, like, for all that I would have preferred him to be taking on the Ireland job. It's kind of willing him to do well, because, you know, it's kind of his new age approach, and sort of trying to bring a group together in a way, like almost developing. Southgate was obsessed with culture to the detriment of tactics. Seemed Carsley, by all accounts, the way the players talk about him, can mesh those very well. And I was kind of willing him to succeed, but it's not looking good.
It's possibly done now. Fellas, we're done. It's a Friday. We're here. End of week 2. Far less tired than I was at the end of week 1. Remember we had a little debrief? That feels like 6 months ago.
That's a sugar rush from the chocolate last night, Joe, I think.
So
let's see how Ireland do on Sunday then.
Well, listen, be under no illusions. It's going to be grim as hell on Monday, I think. Like that atmosphere in Athens, the dreadful, untimely passing of George Baldock, minute silence, big crowd now going, as Aidan Fitzmaurice said. There is not a chance in hell those Greek players have any intention of not putting in a hell of a performance on Sunday. So I think it's going to be sticky, and we'll be talking about that on Monday. Damien Delaney and Gary Breen will be with us. What else are we doing? Oh, there's Leinster-Munster obviously on Saturday. The rugby, Ulster-Connacht.
Joe Canning coming up next
Joe
week.
Canning in studio Tuesday. Yeah. So we might talk about the rugby in more depth on Wednesday. I suspect we'll do a Republic of Ireland debrief podcast Monday. Also not the Monday panel.
We're back to the drawing board of it.
Name. Tuesday, Joe Canning. Wednesday, we'll do some rugby. It's kind of the gist of the plan. And then the following weekend is Railway Cup Rebirth.
It's the Railway Cup Rebirth.
And also the new rules thingy, but the Railway Cup.
We're going to go big on Railway Cup then on the following Monday.
Yeah, okay. Fellas, another fine week. Conan, pleasure.
Likewise.
Ronan, welcome.
It's good to be back, Joe.
Yeah, okay. We'll talk to you Monday.